Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to take you deep inside the organizational priorities of a major global entity.
We've gotten our hands on a set of internal governance documents.
And these are the specific instructions given to their local leadership. And what they reveal is, well, it's a truly stunning contrast in how they approach criminal behavior versus, personal moral failures.
Our core source for this is a Polish language handbook for their religious elders. It's titled Patrzcie do Zubuju.
Which translates to shepherd the flock of God.
Exactly. And we're working from the September 2025 edition, specifically Chapter 9, which deals with something they call wykorzystywanie dziecka, or child exploitation.
So our mission today is to analyze their guidance on one of the heaviest criminal issues there is, the viewing of child sexual abuse material, or CSAM.
And we're going to compare it directly to the penalty for something that's not even a crime, something like smoking.
Right. We're looking at what we're calling the inverted scale, where the most severe penalty is for a personal habit, while a felony is treated as this sort of nuanced disciplinary issue.
We want to show you exactly where the organization draws its lines, because you'll find those lines often run completely contrary to legal and ethical standards in the outside world.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with their internal classification. What does this handbook explicitly tell elders to do when a member is found viewing CSAM?
The first instruction is probably the most important. It's definitional. The document calls the act a serious violation of Jehovah's principles.
Okay, a violation of principles.
But, and this is the huge caveat that changes everything, the policy explicitly states that viewing CSAM is not considered sexual abuse of a child from the congregation's perspective.
Wait, hang on. From the congregation's perspective.
Yes.
They're dealing with material that is literally evidence of child sexual abuse, but they classify the viewing of it as not abuse. How does that even work? What's the impact of that little phrase?
That phrase is the key to everything. It's about minimizing external accountability. By calling it a violation of principles, but not abuse, they immediately downgrade it
From a public safety crime.
to a private spiritual failing. It allows them to handle it internally, without the immediate legal obligation that an admission of abuse would trigger. They just reframe the crime as a character flaw.
Something that can be fixed with counseling.
Potentially, yes.
That sounds like a system designed for institutional triage. So the punishment isn't automatic, it's conditional, right? Based on what the person does next.
Precisely. The document says the decision to pursue judicial measures, which means forming a full disciplinary committee. It says the severity may depend on the frequency and scale of the improper conduct.
Frequency and scale. Wow, that phrase is doing a lot of work there.
It is.
It means the first response could be incredibly light. Maybe just strict advice or counsel. They could avoid a committee entirely if the guy says it only happened once.
That is the internal mechanism of minimization. They flat out tell the elders that a committee is only necessary in some cases.
Okay, and if they do form one, what's the first step?
The first step is critical. They must contact the organization's internal service department, or Dział Służby.
The service department, not the police, not Child Protective Service.
No, an internal administrative body.
So what do? Are they investigators?
Their role is primarily legal protection for the organization. They're gatekeepers. They provide guidance on how to navigate the internal process and how to handle the bare minimum requirements of local reporting laws, if any even apply.
They're not law enforcement.
Not at all. They're ensuring internal policy is followed and that institutional risk is contained. It's a protocol that, from step one, prioritizes self-preservation.
And this just creates this immediate, profound gap with the legal standards that apply to, you, the listener, in the civilized world.
Absolutely.
When we look at the law, possession or viewing of CSAM is a bright line rule.
The legal reality is absolute. In almost any legal system, viewing or storing a single file, one image, one time, is an automatic, serious criminal offense. There's no legal argument about frequency or scale to determine if a crime was committed.
The crime is the act itself.
Exactly.
And the consequences are severe. We're talking prison time, huge fines, being put on a sex offender registry, never being able to work with kids again. The law doesn't care about volume. It cares that you supported a criminal industry.
And this is the fundamental dangerous flaw in the organization's policy. By focusing on frequency and scale, it teaches its leaders to grade a crime that the law views as non-negotiable.
It creates an internal permission structure to just minimize the whole thing.
It does.
So instead of asking, did a crime occur that we have to report, They're asking, how often did this person struggle with their spiritual weakness?
Exactly. You're taking a public safety crime and you're downgrading it into a flexible spiritual discipline problem.
And if you tell an elder that a committee is only necessary in some cases, you're almost encouraging them to accept the "it was a one-off mistake" excuse.
You are. It avoids the workload. It avoids the risk to the organization. It effectively institutionalizes negligence by confusing a crime with a sin.
Right. Managing the sin instead of reporting the crime. Which brings us to the centerpiece of this deep dive, the inverted scale.
Yes.
Let's look at their highest penalty, this shunning, and see what it's actually used for. And we're talking about tobacco.
This is where the priorities just become crystal clear. It's like an X-ray of their institutional values.
Okay, so according to the source materials, if a baptized member is found smoking cigarettes and refuses to quit after a reasonable time, that's grounds for removal.
That process is called disfellowshipping, shunning. And for anyone unfamiliar, this is the organization's nuclear option. It is the most severe penalty they have.
And we need to be clear about what that means. It's not just being asked to leave. It's immediate, absolute, total social exclusion from everyone.
Including, in many cases, your own family, if they're still in the faith.
You lose your friends, your community, your entire support system. It's a social death sentence inside that structure, all for a personal habit that is legal everywhere.
And that ultimate penalty is for things they consider threats to their spiritual purity. Smoking, voting in an election, celebrating a birthday.
So now, let's put that side by side with the policy on viewing exploitation material. CSAM viewing, a serious felony, may result in strict advice.
Depending on the frequency.
The synthesis is just. It's stark. A non-criminal habit like smoking gets you the highest religious penalty, total exclusion.
While viewing severe criminal material, which is part of a global exploitation market, becomes an internal disciplinary question on a sliding scale.
The message it sends is unavoidable. Bad internal behavior is a greater threat to our purity than supporting external crime.
The system protects its spiritual reputation from the stain of tobacco more rigorously than it protects children.
And this leads to that shocking real-world possibility. An individual who viewed CSAM could just get strict counsel and, according to this policy, retain their full standing.
Yes, they could still be an unrestricted member.
Serving in positions of responsibility, maybe even teaching the congregation from the stage about how to live, while a smoker is completely shunned.
The system is willing to risk the safety of its members to retain control of the internal process.
And that moves us squarely into legal and ethical accountability. When an organization does this, what they're doing is institutional self-preservation.
That's all it is. They're prioritizing the internal handling of scandal over following external law.
To make this less abstract, the source material draws a really strong analogy. It compares viewing CSAM to knowingly buying stolen goods or even watching real-world torture or murder videos.
And that framing is essential. The viewing isn't a passive sin. It's the final, profitable link in a global chain of exploitation. Demand creates the market.
So the policy is toxic because it reduces the seriousness?
Yeah. It teaches elders to be amateur judges of frequency and repentance, instead of just doing what the law requires, reporting it.
So what about legal accountability for the organization itself? Can they get in trouble just for publishing this handbook in Polish?
Generally, no. Organizations aren't punished for their internal guidance in theory. They're punished for the consequences of applying it.
For systemic concealment, for negligence, for the harm that results.
Exactly. But this document is the smoking gun. It's key evidence in civil lawsuits, the kind that result in multi-million-dollar settlements.
Why is this written guidance so damning for them?
Because it proves, on paper, that the organization knew the risk of this crime, and then it proactively built a mechanism, the service department, the frequency clause, to minimize the external consequences for itself.
Not for protecting children.
No. When the policy tells leaders to assess internal factors instead of just mandating they report a felony, that proves a deliberate choice to prioritize internal risk management over public safety.
And that distinction is just devastating evidence in a courtroom.
It is. It shows intent to manage the perception of the problem, not the problem itself.
Okay, so if we flip this script, what does an ethical, legally compliant policy actually look like?
An ethical instruction is simple. It puts law and safety above everything. Principle 1 is zero tolerance. Frequency is irrelevant. One file, one viewing is enough to trigger the full safety protocol.
No grading the sin, no discussion of how many times they slipped up.
Correct. Principle 2, immediate suspension. The person is immediately barred from all duties, especially any contact with vulnerable people. This is a safety measure, not a punishment.
Get them away from kids instantly.
Principle 3. Mandatory external reporting. Leaders are obligated to call the police or child protective services immediately. Internal counsel is completely secondary to legal compliance.
The elders are not the judges of the crime.
That's principle 4. No internal assessment of severity. Elders are explicitly forbidden from playing judge. The standard is clear. Viewing this material is not a moral weakness. It's a public safety crime, and the organization must submit to the law.
This has been an incredibly revealing deep dive. We've analyzed a document that clearly shows where one organization's priorities lie.
We have.
We've seen how the line between a felony crime and a personal failing is just. It's deliberately blurred by rules about frequency and scale. The system prioritizes internal control over external safety.
When an organization's highest punishment shunning is for a non-criminal failure like smoking, while a serious crime like viewing exploitation material is handled with conditional internal discipline, it just demonstrates a radical shift in priorities.
The focus is moved completely away from the victim.
And on to protecting the organization's reputation and its own internal rules.
So here is a provocative thought for you to mull over after this deep dive. If a system's official written policy gives leaders discretion to minimize the legal consequences of viewing exploitation material, while simultaneously imposing the most socially devastating penalty for something like smoking, what does that choice reveal about where the system believes the real threat and the greatest source of shame truly lies? Is the system more fearful of the crime or the stain of the sin?